It was around 5:30 in the evening on a Sunday when Rachel strolled through the front door, like she had no care in the world. She tossed her purse and keys onto the nightstand without even a glance my way and walked down the hall toward our bedroom. I'm not even sure if she noticed me sitting in the office, though it didn't matter much. Lately, I've become practically invisible to her. It's been like that for a while now, like I don't exist in her world anymore. I decided to get up and follow her. I grabbed her keys, snatched my spare ones off her keyring, and started digging through her purse. I took her phone, pulled out her wallet, and emptied it of every bit of cash and credit she had, stashing it all in my pocket, just in case. I even took her driver's license for good measure, before slipping back into the office, acting like nothing had happened. About 15 minutes later, Rachel came out of the bedroom, all dressed up like she was headed to a party. She spotted me then, but only gave me a passing glance as she swung her purse over her shoulder and grabbed her keys. "I'm going out with some girls from work." "Don't wait up," she said, like I should just accept that without question. But I wasn't having it. "No, you're not going out with the girls from work," I shot back. She didn't even blink. "Tom, how many times do I have to tell you? You don't control me." "I'll do whatever I please," she snapped, like I was some clueless fool. I shook my head. "I'm not saying you can't go out with them," I replied calmly. "I'm saying you're not, because you're going to see your boyfriend. Don't lie to me, Ratch. I'm not stupid." For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me. Then, with this boldness that still takes me by surprise sometimes, she marched into the office and squared up to me. "All right, Tom, let's cut the crap. You've got two options. You can either salvage this mess of a marriage by giving me some space, or I'll divorce you and make sure you're cut out of my life for good. So, what's it gonna be?" I just smirked. "I'll take door number 3. She rolled her eyes. "There's no door number 3, Tom. Either you accept that I've moved on and found a real man, or you deal with the consequences." At that, I got up, walked over to her, and pushed her against the wall. Not hard, but enough to get my point across. I yanked off her engagement ring and wedding band, my face inches from hers. "Here's your door number 3, Ratch," I growled, staring her dead in the eyes. "It's my front door. And when you walk out of it, it'll be the last time. You won't be walking out with anything else. No more money. No more house. No more car. No more daughter. Nothing. You'll be done." She looked nervous for the first time, muttering, "You're living in a fantasy, Tom. My lawyer's going to ruin you tomorrow. I'll have the divorce papers sent to your work. You mess with me, and you'll regret it." I dragged her toward the front door. Her heels clacked awkwardly as she stumbled and started yelling, a mess of rage and fear. It was a strange sight. After all these years of her acting tough, she had no idea how to respond when I finally pushed back. When I got her outside, I slammed the door and locked it behind her. I'd changed the locks earlier that day. As I leaned against the door, catching my breath, I made my first call. I dialed my 19-year-old daughter, Lily, who was away at college. "Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad. Things with your mom have reached a point. Looks like she's moving in with her boyfriend, and I wanted to give you a heads up. I've got recordings of our last few conversations and plenty of our old arguments if you ever want to hear the truth, 'cause she's probably going to twist things and blame me for all of this. You need to know the truth, Lily. Your mom's been cheating for a while now. I don't know how many times, but she's made her choice. And just so you know, this guy she's with, well, he's not someone you should be around. I'll explain more when you come home." I asked Lily to come home that weekend so we could talk, and thankfully, she agreed. After I hung up, I made another call, this time to Anna, our neighbor down the block. She'd been there for me through a lot of this mess. "Anna, it's Tom. If that offer's still open, I'd like to take you up on it. Can you come by in about an hour?" I didn't give her all the details, just enough to let her know I needed support. Ratch and I had met young, gotten married quickly, and before we knew it, we had Lily. It seemed fine at first, but as the years went on, Ratch turned into someone else entirely. She got meaner, more manipulative, and controlling. No matter how much I tried to keep the peace or make her happy, nothing worked. Looking back, I realized I was bending over backward for someone who didn't give a damn about me. And in doing that, I only made things worse for myself. Now, In our 40s, everything had fallen apart. I found out she was seeing a guy named Gregory, or Greg as they call him, a guy with a violent streak. When I finally accepted that our marriage was beyond saving, I felt a strange kind of relief. I'd already started planning for this long before I found out about her affair. I've heard stories about guys who take half the money when they leave. Not me. I took every penny I could find, every last bit of cash in the house. I changed the locks and made sure I'd set the stage for Ratch's downfall. She might have been dangerous, but I knew her well enough to use that against her. In fact, I'd been preparing for this for years, secretly recording our arguments. Ratch always thought that little device I carried was an MP3 player, but it was actually a recorder, capturing every cruel word she ever threw at me. I knew no one would believe me without proof, so I made sure to gather plenty. I wanted Lily to see the real side of her mother. I wanted the world to know who Ratch really was. By Monday, I'd arranged for a little celebration in the break room at work. A banner hung over the table that read, "Happy Divorce," with cake and ice cream set out. I sat there waiting for the process server, eager to get things rolling. Luckily for me, the process server that day was a cheerful, chubby girl who seemed to enjoy the moment just as much as I did. She snapped plenty of pictures as my coworkers, and I made a spectacle of celebrating my divorce papers. In one of the photos, I'm kissing her cheek while she wears a party hat, and in another, I'm feeding her cake, both of us grinning like fools. After the celebration wrapped up, I sent Ratch an email with all the photos from the party attached. But I didn't stop there. I threw in a few extras for good measure. Among the pictures were some of me and Anna, my new roommate, lounging in bed, the sheets pulled up, smiling wide. I made sure Ratch would notice Anna wearing Ratch's wedding rings, her hand resting comfortably on my chest. About an hour later, Ratch called me in a fit of rage. "You scumbag. My lawyer is going to tear you apart when he sees these pictures. What were you thinking, you idiot?" I didn't even flinch. "Calm down, Ratch. There's nothing scandalous in those photos. No nudity, no inappropriate behavior. Just some harmless fun between neighbors. Lighten up," I shot back, enjoying every second of her fury. "We'll deal with this later, Tom," she snapped. "I'm coming by the house tonight to pick up a few things. You'd better not be there. If I'm not home, you won't be able to get in. I changed all the locks. If you need anything, you'll have to get here before 6:45. Anna and I have plans at 7, and I don't intend to be late," I told her coolly. "Oh, and by the way, last night was the most fun I've had in years, and tonight's shaping up to be even better." With that, I hung up, ignoring the 5 or 6 times she called after that. I didn't pick up, but I made sure to listen to every voicemail she left. I knew that, in her anger, Ratch might slip up and say something useful, something that could work in my favor, and sure enough, over the next few weeks, she did just that. That afternoon, at 4:30, I drove over to Ratch's workplace, making sure to get there before rush hour. I wanted to pull off something quick and sneaky, so I scoped out her parking lot for cameras. None in sight. Perfect. I parked beside her car and made a quick circle around it with my wire cutters, snipping the valve stems off all her tires. I knew she'd be furious, and there'd be no way for her to fix them in time to make it home by 6:45. Sure enough, at 6:35, she showed up, clearly in a rush, probably desperate to get home. I could tell she hadn't come straight from work. No surprise there. She must have been with her lover again. I knew she'd stashed clothes at his place, based on receipts I'd found, so I figured she wasn't coming home for any wardrobe. I slipped out the back and headed to Anna's house, leaving Ratch to pound on the door and scream at the top of her lungs. When I came back later that evening, I found one of my front windows smashed and blood splattered around it. After checking the footage from the porch camera, I called the cops. The video was clear as day. Ratch had smashed the window with a tire iron, yelling threats at me while she did it. She'd cut her arm pretty bad in the process, and the lock I'd installed, which needed a key from both sides, had stopped her from getting in. The next morning, I filed a restraining order against her, and the papers were served that same day. She was officially banned from coming within 500 feet of me or the house. Her reaction was, predictably, explosive. "What the hell are you doing, you idiot?" was the start of her next call, filled with rage and more threats. I recorded the whole thing, as usual. A few hours later, once she cooled off, Ratch called again, this time mentioning that she was sending her friend Lindsay over to grab some of her things. That caught my attention. What was Ratch so desperate to get from the house? My curiosity got the better of me, so I agreed to meet Lindsay at 5:30 the next day. I left work early that Tuesday, set up a small video camera in my bedroom, and linked it to a monitor in my office. I wanted to keep a close eye on whatever Lindsay was up to. She showed up right on time, and I greeted her with a warm smile, acting like everything was fine. As she started packing clothes into 2 black plastic trash bags, I sat on the bed, watching her carefully. She looked a little nervous, but I didn't let on that I noticed. Then she asked for some water, so I got up and headed to the kitchen. But when I checked the monitor, I saw her pull a shoebox from Ratch's closet and slip it into one of the bags. After that, she went right back to packing clothes like nothing had happened. When I brought her the water, she hurried to finish up and said that she was done, suggesting we each take one of the bags out to her car. She insisted on carrying the heavier one herself, which only made me more suspicious. As we walked toward the door, I stopped her. Is there something in that bag I should know about? I asked, grabbing her wrist gently. Lindsay's face went pale. She stammered something about the box just having some clothes Ratch needed, but the nervous look in her eyes told me she was lying. When I opened the box, the unmistakable smell of old cash hit me. Inside, there were stacks of worn $50 and $100 bills. You were trying to steal from me, I said, standing up and blocking the doorway. No, it's Ratch's money. She told me to come get it. I wasn't going to take it for myself, Lindsay pleaded, her voice shaking. I crossed my arms, not buying a word. You came here to pack clothes, and now you're leaving with a box full of money? That's theft, plain and simple. I should call the cops right now. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, Tom, don't call the police. I have kids, a husband. I'm not a thief, I swear. I let her sit on the couch, letting the tension hang in the air for a moment. Lindsay, I'm disappointed. You're never welcome in this house again. But if you want a chance to make this right, you've got one option. Go back to Ratch and tell her I caught you red-handed. Then, from now on, you'll report everything you see or hear about her and Greg back to me. Especially anything about the divorce. Lindsay, through sobs, nodded her head, knowing she didn't have much of a choice. You're not to breathe a word about our little arrangement, I told Lindsay firmly. Ratch has made the colossal mistake of getting involved with that lowlife, and in the end, you'll help her realize she needs to leave him. I made sure Lindsay knew the stakes. I had everything on video, and if she didn't play along, I could turn the footage over to the cops anytime. With a heavy sigh, she reluctantly agreed to be my eyes and ears. As soon as she left, I grabbed that box of cash and made my way down the block to Anna's house. She agreed to hide it for me until I could figure out a safer place to stash it, somewhere far out of Ratch's reach. I had a pretty good idea of where the money had come from, too. Ratch's Aunt Doris, notorious for being tight with her money, had passed away a few months back, leaving everything to Ratch. Now, I knew about the cottage Aunt Doris had left her, but there had been no mention of a stash of cash. It seemed Ratch had discovered a hidden pile of money when she went to inspect the cabin after the will reading. Later that evening, Ratch called, absolutely losing her mind. I was careful to record every second of the conversation. That money is mine, Tom. I want my damn money back, she screamed, her voice thick with rage. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Ratch, I replied calmly. I caught Lindsay trying to steal some cash off my nightstand, so I took it back. If there was money in a shoebox, I don't know anything about that. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Tom, she spat. The money from Aunt Doris. Well, if Lindsay found some money in a shoebox, maybe she kept it for herself, I suggested. I don't have it, and if you didn't tell me about this cash, then you didn't report it on your taxes either. I've looked over last year's returns. Feel free to get the police involved, Ratch. Then we can loop in the IRS about your little case of tax evasion. There was a long pause before she hung up. I'd clearly hit a nerve. At this point, I knew Ratch wouldn't go quietly. I'd pushed her too far, and I expected some kind of retaliation. With the restraining order keeping her away from me, I figured she'd try to hit me where she thought it would hurt. My car, just like I had done to hers. so I made sure I was prepared. I already had a dashboard camera installed, but that wasn't enough. I needed something that would catch her red-handed if she tried anything. On Wednesday morning, I parked my car out front and set up a second camera on the exterior of the house. It was well hidden, streaming directly to my laptop, which I checked an hour before lunch. Sure enough, around midday, there she was, pulling up behind my car, hammer in hand. I watched live as she went to work, smashing the windows, denting the panels, and shattering the windshield while shouting like a lunatic. A chill ran down my spine as I dialed 911. By the time Ratch was pulling out of the driveway, the police were already waiting for her at the end of the block. With the video evidence of her destroying my Toyota, it wasn't hard for the officers to arrest her. To top it off, she resisted arrest, which only added more charges to the pile. As they hauled her away, I made sure to meet her gaze, her eyes full of desperation while I just stood there, silent. That same day, Ratch's divorce lawyer called me, letting me know there'd be a court hearing about the money I'd withdrawn from our joint accounts. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning at 10 a.m., and I made sure to get there early. Ratch walked in just before the hearing, flanked by her lawyer, with that familiar smug look on her face. Her lawyer started off by telling the judge, "Your Honor, my client has been unfairly denied access to the joint bank accounts. After she filed for divorce, her husband emptied them entirely. We're requesting a fair 50-50 split." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, would you like to respond?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, standing up. "My wife has been withdrawing money from our joint accounts for months, funneling it into her personal account while continuing to let me cover all the bills and rent. The money I withdrew was compensation for what I've already paid, considering she abandoned our marriage to be with her lover." Ratch shot up from her seat, interrupting. "That's not true. He drained our savings, left me with nothing." But her lawyer quickly pulled her back down, whispering frantically. I handed over a stack of documents to the judge. "These are bank statements from the past year, Your Honor. They show Ratch's regular salary deposits and bonuses up until about 6 months ago, when they stopped. I also have a recorded call with her HR department confirming that she switched her direct deposits to a private account around that same time. The total amount diverted from our joint account is substantial." The judge flipped through the papers before looking at Ratch. "Ms. Mitchell, do you have anything to say?" Ratch's lawyer stood cautiously. "Your Honor, even if my client has her own funds, Mr. Mitchell is still obligated to provide her with half of the marital assets." The judge didn't look impressed. "Counselor, I don't take kindly to dishonesty. Your client claimed she was left with nothing, yet it's clear she was siphoning off funds behind her husband's back. Given Mr. Mitchell has been covering the household expenses, there's no reason to alter the financial arrangements at this time. The division of assets will be addressed in the final divorce decree. Case closed." As I was leaving the courthouse, Ratch cornered me in the hallway, her face twisted in anger. She started hurling threats, but I calmly pulled out my phone. "Ratch, you're violating the restraining order right now. If you don't walk away, I'll be calling the police." "Oh, and how is jail? Ready for another stint? You've still got criminal charges hanging over your head?" She clenched her fists, her face flushed with rage, but she backed down, watching me walk away. Later that night, I decided to go to a different bar, one where I'd met an interesting guy named Ethan a while back. Luckily, he was there again. I walked up, greeted him, and asked if he remembered me. Ethan gave me a sideways smile. "Your name ain't important, friend," he said. It was the start of an even stranger chapter in my life. Ethan leaned back in his chair, shaking his head as he mentioned his clunker of a car. "Yeah, I still got that beat-up piece of junk. My wife took the good one when she ran off with her new man. Left me with a car that doesn't even have working air conditioning. Can't afford to fix it either." I nodded, sensing an opportunity. "What's your insurance like, Ethan? If you play your cards right, I might be able to help you get something a bit more comfortable." His eyes lit up with curiosity. "I'm listening. Picture this. You're driving down 38th Street, just minding your business, when all of a sudden, a gray cat darts out in front of your car. You slam on the brakes, naturally, and there's a good chance the lady tailing you rear-ends that old heap of yours. She's going faster than 15 miles per hour, so it could be a total loss. But as long as you've got your seatbelt on and your head against the headrest, you'll walk away just fine. And the insurance? That'll cover the damages. Might even get you something with working AC. Ethan hesitated, a little wary. Yeah, but what if the woman who hits me gets hurt? I can't live with that on my conscience. I gave him a knowing look. Trust me, Ethan. This woman's no saint. She's an unfaithful wife. And there won't be anyone else in her car if you follow the plan. You don't need to worry about her. He grinned. Man, I can't stand cheaters. And I definitely need to ditch this car. All right, tell me more. Here's the deal. Tomorrow, park at the corner of 38th and Lessing at 5 p.m. sharp. Keep an eye out for a blue Miata pulling out of the parking lot. When you see it, pull out in front of her. She's not one to pass cars, so just drive slowly for a block or two until she's riding your bumper. That's when you'll spot the cat crossing the street. Hit the brakes hard, stay in the car, and then call emergency services. Mention a possible neck injury, just to be safe. Oh, and remember, we never met. I won't be back at this bar, and we don't know each other. Ethan chuckled, raising his drink. Dude, I'm colder than the AC in my new car. On Friday, I left work a little early so I could be home when Lily arrived. She'd finished up her classes and came back that Sunday evening. We sat down to discuss everything, the divorce, the mess with her mother, and everything in between. I even played her the recording of the door number 3 conversation I had with Ratch. Lily was shocked by the coldness in her mother's voice, by how calculated she'd been. It was a side of Ratch my daughter had never seen. Afterward, I shared more recordings from the last 2 years, exposing the ugly truth of how her mother had treated me. Lily sat there, stunned. What do you know about the guy Mom's with, Dad? I know he's bad news, and I don't want you anywhere near him, I warned her. If you need to meet with your mom, do it in a public place. I'm not sure what this guy's capable of, and I don't want you getting caught up in something dangerous. Just be careful, okay? And always carry something to protect yourself, just in case. Lily looked down, clearly struggling to wrap her head around it all. I knew you and Mom had problems, but I never realized it was this bad. What went wrong between you two? I'd been expecting that question, and I had my answer ready. I explained to her that the core of our issues came down to different views on marriage. I'd thought about it a lot and figured out that there are really 4 ways power can be divided in a relationship. First, you've got the situation where neither person steps up to lead. Everything just drifts, like a ship with no captain, and nothing ever gets done. Then, there's the constant power struggle, where both people try to take charge and end up clashing all the time. Some couples divide responsibilities, which is what I'd hoped for going into my marriage with your mom. I wanted an equal partnership, where we'd make decisions together, share the load. But it didn't work out that way. Lily nodded, listening carefully. Then there's the traditional dynamic, where the man takes full control. Some people think of that as old-fashioned, maybe even oppressive. But in the right relationship, if the man genuinely devotes himself to his wife's happiness, it can be a fairy tale for the right kind of woman. Like your grandparents, your grandmother was more passive, and your grandfather took the reins. It worked for them, even though he could be tough at times. I paused, watching her absorb what I was saying. Your mom, I think, grew up expecting that same dynamic. She saw her dad take charge, so she thought I'd be the same way. But when I tried to share responsibilities equally, she saw that as a weakness. She started losing respect for me, no matter how hard I tried to please her. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. And that's where we ended up in the last scenario. The wife takes control. Your mom decided she needed to run the show, and when I didn't live up to her impossible standards, she became cruel. She bossed me around, decided what projects we should do, and nitpicked everything I did until I couldn't take it anymore. She'd even tell me how to hold the tools when I was fixing something, like I was some idiot who didn't know how to work a wrench. That's when it all went wrong. Lily looked pained, but she didn't interrupt. When a wife takes over like that, it's against the natural balance, I think. No man can thrive in a relationship where he's constantly emasculated. No matter how much love he still has for her, the respect fades. And when the wife no longer respects her husband, it's a downward spiral. That's what happened between me and your mom. I couldn't live like that anymore, and when I pushed back, she treated me like a rebellious child. I think she'll never respect me again, no matter what I do. I took a deep breath and added, this divorce might be my last chance to earn that respect back, but honestly, I doubt I'll ever get it. The damage is done. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing everything I'd told her. I understand why you're doing what you're doing now, Dad. I see how hard it's been for you to stand up to her. I nodded. It's important that you remember this, Lily, when you're making decisions about your own relationships. Whether it's picking a career, buying a house, or starting a family, respect has to be mutual. If you don't have that, nothing else will work. I stressed to Lily that in any relationship, it's crucial both partners understand what they're getting into, so they don't end up in the miserable mess her mother and I found ourselves in. She nodded, clearly taking it to heart. I'll keep that in mind, Dad, she promised. I could see she was genuinely considering everything I'd told her. Then, the phone rang. Mr. Mitchell, this is Memorial Hospital. Your wife was in a car accident. She's stable and not seriously hurt, but she'll need to stay with us overnight. Lily and I drove straight to the hospital. When we got there, I let her go in first. She didn't stay long, and when she came out looking upset, I could tell she hadn't been gentle with her mother. I could only imagine what Lily had said to Ratch. I walked in after her. Ratch looked rough, bruised face, arm in a cast. Well, you look like hell, Ratch, I said with a smirk. Tough week, huh? Lost your marriage, your husband, your house, got hit with a restraining order, arrested for a felony, and now your car's totaled. Here you are, lying in a hospital bed with a broken wrist and a busted face. Seems like this divorce is going a lot better for me than it is for you. Freak you, she muttered, trying to sound tough, but she was too worn down to keep up the act. Come on, Ratch. What happened to your clever little comebacks? Has your knight in shining armor, Greg, shown up to visit you yet? Oh wait, he's probably busy with one of his other two women. You didn't know about them, did you? Bet you didn't see that coming. I saw her face go pale. Yeah, Ratch. You were never his one and only. How long until he makes you take turns with the other women? Never thought of you as someone who'd share, but you might want to learn that skill. Could be useful for your new life in prison. I'm not going to jail, she snapped. My lawyer's gonna get the charges dropped. I chuckled. Really? You think you're walking away from this? You smashed up my car, threatened me, and now you're sitting here thinking you're gonna skate out of it? I had a little chat with the DA, Ratch. He's coming for you hard. He's got photos, video evidence, and he's got an election to win. You're the perfect target. He's gonna push for the maximum penalty. She sat there, stunned into silence, staring at the floor. Oh, by the way, did you figure out who to call about your car insurance yet? I asked, knowing full well she hadn't. Car insurance? What are you talking about? She looked genuinely confused. Wait, you didn't get new insurance when you filed for divorce? I removed your car from my policy. You must have known about that. You insisted on keeping your name on the Miata. Well, if you didn't bother getting new coverage, you're in some deep trouble. That car's totaled, and now you've got fines, towing fees, and 3 years of payments ahead of you. That Miata might be sitting in a junkyard while you're still paying it off. And considering you're about to lose your job after the felony conviction, you won't be needing another car anytime soon. I leaned in closer, twisting the knife. And I'm guessing you'll have to pay for the medical bills of the guy you hit, too. His insurance company's gonna be after you for that. But hey, at least you've still got health insurance, right? Her eyes went wide. I'm still on yours. I shook my head. Nope. I took you off my health insurance on Monday. Didn't you take care of that too? Guess not. So that means the ambulance ride, ER visit, x-rays, doctor fees, cast for your arm, and hospital stay, all out of pocket. That's gonna run you thousands. You might want to start thinking about how you're gonna cover that. She looked like she was about to break down, but I didn't care. Speaking of health, I added, remember a couple of years ago when you got sick? I took a week off work to take care of you, cleaned up after you, made sure you had your medicine, did everything I could to help. And what did I get in return? A week later, when you were better, you started yelling at me again, calling me names. I wonder how well old Greg's gonna take care of you the next time you get sick. Somehow, I don't think he's the type to hold your hair while you're throwing up. I glanced at the clock. Well, I guess I'd better call Greg. Let him know you're free now that his other woman's probably done with him for the night." I turned to leave, hearing her sob quietly behind me. I didn't look back. I was done with her. Things settled down for a while after that. I kept tabs on Lindsay every so often, just to make sure she wasn't getting too deep into Ratch's mess. She started distancing herself from Ratch, worried about the influence Greg had over her. It wasn't long before Lindsay realized Ratch was sinking fast. Then, one night, as I was heading up the walkway to my house, I got jumped. I'd been on guard for something like this, but I didn't see it coming. A guy in a ski mask tackled me, knocking the wind out of me, and twisted my arm behind my back. "Give me the box of money," he growled, "and tell the DA to drop the charges." I was pinned, feeling helpless, but I still had my car key remote in my hand. I fumbled for the panic button and hit it. The car alarm blared, and lights flicked on from the neighbors' houses. The masked man, Greg, I'm sure, punched me again, furious, but then bolted as people started looking out their windows. I yelled for someone to call 911, and a cop showed up a few minutes later. I wasn't hurt badly enough for an ambulance, and Greg was long gone by then. None of the neighbors saw him clearly, so he slipped away without facing the consequences for the attack. The real shock came the next day when I told Lily about what happened. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Dad, I didn't want to tell you, but I had a run-in with Greg, too." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Mom called me, asked to meet up." I agreed, but I told her I didn't want to go to their apartment. When I got there, she sat me down on the couch. Then Greg came out. He told me that since Mom wasn't doing well with her injuries, I'd have to take care of his needs. He said she owed him, and I'd have to pay for it. I felt a lump forming in my throat, but I stayed quiet as Lily continued. I looked at Mom, and she just stared at the floor. She didn't say a word. Greg told me to make her listen to him. And then Mom, she looked at me and begged, "Please, baby, just do what he says. It won't be that bad. I really need you to do this for me." I felt sick to my stomach. "What did you do?" Lily clenched her fists, her voice trembling. He grabbed my wrist and started pulling me toward the bedroom. But I had pepper spray in my purse, and I sprayed it right in his face. Greg screamed in pain as he clawed at his face, and Lily, quick on her feet, grabbed her purse and tried to pull her mom toward the door. But Ratch, as always, resisted. Instead of escaping, she rushed over to help Greg in the bathroom. Lily yelled for her to come with her, but Ratch made her choice. She went to that scumbag. My own daughter had to leave her mother behind because she chose to stay with that abusive idiot. "I can't believe she tried to set me up with him, Dad," Lily said, her voice full of anger and disgust. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her for that." Hearing Lily say that made my blood boil like it never had before. I found myself pacing the house, thinking about the Beretta I kept in the bedroom. I'll admit, I almost went for it. But after some time, Lily reassured me. She wasn't physically hurt, and she urged me to think about the future instead of what I might do in my rage. I made her promise me something then. Never walk alone until after the trial, and always keep something with her for protection. She agreed, and I felt a little more at ease. Still, Greg was out there, taunting me. He thought he could intimidate me into backing off, but I had something he didn't expect. I went straight to the DA with a recording of Lily describing what Greg had done to her, as well as details of his attack on me. When the DA asked if I'd consider being lenient with Ratch or dropping the charges, I gave him a hard no. She's under his control, and the only way to help her is to separate them, I told him. A little time in prison might straighten her out. The DA agreed, and the trial moved forward. I stayed cautious, but there were moments when I felt vulnerable, especially when I left for work or came home, pulling into that isolated garage down the long ranch road. It was about 10 miles from the nearest turnoff, and anything could happen out there. That's why I always had my Beretta in the car with me, just in case. One evening, just days before Ratch's trial, I noticed a pickup truck following me about 2 miles from home. The headlights were glaring in my rearview mirror, and my stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. The truck was tailgating me hard, barely 20 feet from my bumper at 55 miles per hour. I grabbed my phone, called emergency, and started recording. I sped up to 70, but the truck stayed on me, matching my speed. I frantically told the dispatcher what was happening, requesting they get in touch with the detective handling my assault case. The truck stuck to me like glue for another 5 miles as I narrated everything into the phone, just in case something went down. I had the pistol on the seat next to me, ready for whatever might come next. As I approached a bridge over a small creek, I got this sick feeling in my gut. I could tell the driver was about to try forcing me off the road. Sure enough, the truck sped up and pulled up alongside me, trying to push me toward the edge. That's when I caught a glimpse of Ratch's face in the passenger seat. They were coming for me. I slammed on the brakes, skidding hard but keeping control. The truck flew past me, stopping just ahead. My car slid to a stop on the shoulder, half hanging over a slope down to the creek bed. I grabbed my gun, phone, and recorder and scrambled out of the car, heading down the slope toward the cover of the bridge. I heard the truck's brake lights click on, and for a moment, I thought they were coming after me. The darkness was thick under the bridge, and though I was worried about snakes or anything else that might be lurking, Greg was my bigger concern. I found a spot to crouch and held the Beretta close, waiting. Time seemed to stretch on forever, but in reality, it was only a few minutes. Then I heard the sirens, finally, in the distance. I started making my way back up the slope, leaving the gun behind. I raised my hands as I reached the road, hoping the arriving police wouldn't mistake me for the threat. Sure enough, they blocked the road, sirens blaring, just as the pickup truck tried to make a run for it. But they were ready. I heard the screech of tires as officers ordered Greg and Ratch to get out and lie on the ground. They were cuffed and hauled away, both of them facing attempted murder charges. I returned home that night, but I couldn't sleep. I stood in the shower for what felt like hours, trying to wash away the shock. Having a spouse facing multiple felonies made the divorce process much simpler, though. The judge took pity on me, and Ratch and her lawyer didn't put up much of a fight. She was desperate to avoid a long prison sentence and was willing to give up almost everything to make that happen. At the sentencing hearing, I did something I never thought I'd do. I stood up in court and spoke about the good person Ratch used to be before she fell under Greg's spell. I even told the court that, over time, I'd be willing to forgive her for trying to kill me. I left out her cheating and the years of torment. I didn't know what Ratch thought of my testimony. She didn't look at me, and I didn't look at her. In the end, Greg got a long sentence. I like to think he's sharing a cell with a guy named Max who's making his life a living hell. Ratch didn't get off so easily, either, but the judge showed her a little more leniency. She wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 3 years. That was 4 years ago. Ratch has been out on parole for about a year now, but I haven't heard a word from her. The DA's office told me she was released, but she hasn't tried to contact Lily, and I didn't expect her to reach out to me. Revenge had seemed sweet at first, but in the end, it left me empty. No matter what I did, I couldn't stop replaying everything that had happened. Maybe that's why, out of nowhere, I picked up the phone and called my ex-wife. Ratch, this is Tom. I've got something of yours, and I want it back. I'd called the rehab center where Ratch was staying. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence on the other end of the line. I wasn't even sure if she was going to respond. Rachel, I want to return your shoebox. Can you hear me? Can we meet so I can give it back to you? I half expected her to hang up, but after a long pause, she finally spoke. Where? When? I don't care. I suggested meeting at a neutral place, a restaurant, maybe, or she could come by the house. Are you free on Sunday? I asked. Another silence, then she answered. I'll be there on Sunday. At 2 p.m. that Sunday, the phone rang. How does one even prepare to meet their ex-wife, the mother of their child, the woman who tried to have them killed, and a convicted felon? Well, I made lemonade and cookies. When Ratch arrived, neither of us attempted a handshake or a hug. We exchanged a simple hello, and I motioned for her to step inside the office. Her hair was shorter now, her face stern and tired. She wasn't wearing much makeup, if any. She looked older than her 50 years, more like 65. I had set out drinks, cookies, and the shoebox on the coffee table between us. She sat down across from me, refusing the drink when I offered it. Did she really think I might poison her? Well, if you don't want lemonade or cookies, I suppose you're just here for the shoebox and whatever else we have to say, I said, trying to ease the tension. She was still suspicious, her eyes hard as she studied me. What's the catch, Tom? What do you want in return? Is there anything left? No catch, Ratch. It's all there, except for a few thousand I added to and gave to Lily for a down payment on her house when she got married. If you want, Lily can start paying you back, but I just gave her my half. Ratch's expression changed then. She hadn't known Lily was married. Lily's been married for 2 years now, I told her. And you're a grandmother. Her little girl's name is Emily Rachel Lewis. Emily, after her other grandmother. Tears filled Ratch's eyes, despite her efforts to hold them back. You haven't talked to Lily in a while, but there's still a way for you two to reconnect. I can help with that if you want, I offered gently. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I reached for the box of tissues I'd left on the table. If you're not ready to leave just yet, I can give you the short version of what's been happening, I said, offering her a way to stay. She wiped her face, trying to regain her composure. Lily's found herself a good guy named John Lewis. He works in IT, and they really seem to click. She's a great mom, Ratch, and they're happy together. I paused. As for me and Anna, well, that didn't last long. She was too young for me, and once she got her life back on track, she moved on. I date here and there, but nothing serious. I've learned I'm better off solo. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then I continued, more for myself than for her. I'm going to share a few thoughts, just because I need to get them out. Maybe you'll get something out of them too. I don't know. But I've been sitting with these thoughts for a while. I leaned back, looking her in the eye. I couldn't wait to see you locked up. I hated you, Ratch. I wished you were dead more times than I can count. But after they put you in prison, something in me changed. I couldn't enjoy the victory. I realized I didn't want to carry that hatred around anymore. So, even though you never asked for it, I forgave you. I realized you weren't entirely to blame. I couldn't understand you until it was too late, and we just stopped communicating. All we did was fight. Ratch sat there, staring at the floor, looking more lost than I'd ever seen her. She didn't say a word. That's the truth, I said quietly. If you have nothing more to add, and if you're not hungry, I won't keep you any longer. I'm sure you have plenty to do. She stood up, grabbing the shoebox, and headed toward the front door. For the first time since I'd thrown her out all those years ago, I called out to her. Rachel, it doesn't matter now, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm curious. Throughout all the years we were together, especially that last day, it was clear you thought I was weak. Do you still think I'm a pushover? Her hand hesitated on the doorknob, and she glanced back at me. Her expression was bitter, but she finally spoke. I hated you, Tom. You were cruel, and you ruined my life. There was a pause, and then she added, but no, I don't think you're a pushover. With that, she walked out of my life for good.